I was in Zimbabwe. I had COVID and I did not know it. I had a few symptoms, but they were nothing to suggest to me that I had the dreaded virus COVID-19. I woke up early on a Thursday morning, July 15, prepared to go take the perfunctory PCR test to be able to fly out of country in 2 days and return to my family here in the United States. When I showered that morning, I had such bad post-nasal drainage that it was almost nauseating. And for a couple of days I had suffered from body aches and I had had some congestion, but I thought it was allergies. After all, I was in a rainforest in Victoria Falls. I had no temperature. I had nothing to suggest to me I had COVID-19. We were off early to the lab to have the PCR test. Took the PCR and went about a full day in one of the greatest tourist spots in all of Africa, Victoria Falls. We did straw market shopping. We went and made reservations for a game drive the next day. We went to the Grand Victoria Falls Hotel, and I felt a bit British that day as I enjoyed tea with my friends on the patio overlooking the Victoria Falls River Gorge. It was a wonderful day, ending with a sunset cruise on the Zambezi River. I thought I felt fine. We would report back to the lodge. Moments after returning to the lodge, a team meeting would be called. I stood up. I walked into the next room to meet with my team, whereupon I was told to retrieve my face mask. I got it, I put it on, and within moments I was notified that I was the lone person on our team who had tested positive for COVID and that I had to enter immediate isolation. It was like a little boy being banished to his room as I went to my room alone and contemplated what might happen to me across the next week and a half. I knew there was a mandatory 10-day isolation. And of course I wondered what would happen when I took another PCR test. Would I get a negative response? Would it permit me the opportunity to return home as I was scheduled to fly? Or was I going to be all alone in Zimbabwe and wait this thing out? Needless to say, I quickly got in touch with my wife back here in the States and informed her I had tested positive for COVID, and we now had to go into a waiting mode to see what was going to happen. I think under such circumstances, it is often more difficult in many ways for the person waiting for the safe and healthy return of a loved one than it is being that person dealing with the issues 3/4 of the way around the world. And so I wanted you to hear from my wife, Lynn, about her initial response when I had to notify her I tested positive for COVID in a very strange place 3/4 of the way around the world.
Well, everybody connected to the team, and the team knew that it was a possibility that they could get COVID. They had all been vaccinated, so all vaccines are not 100%, so they knew it was a possibility they could get COVID. But they could have gotten COVID in the U.S. as well as in Zimbabwe. But when I read the message that he had tested positive, fear just filled every part of me. It was like my heart had just skipped a beat. I was struck with out of control circumstances for me. There was nothing I could do. I couldn't charter a jet jet and go rescue him like I would have liked to have done. But I had out of control circumstances, and in the midst of those out of control circumstances, I was just lost. You know, it's like I was totally lost and there was nothing I could do, but I knew that God was still in control, and I knew that if it was God's will, that Rodney could have a negative COVID test on that Friday, on the 16th. But I just said about fear filling every part of me. Well, I knew that God might not do what I had wanted. So I had fear that God would not do what I wanted and what I was telling him to do. I really wanted a negative COVID test, but my fear was, what if God didn't do that? You know, I wanted God so much to do it that, you know, would God actually leave his will, leave his plans for Rodney and I, and give him a negative COVID test just because I asked for it? Well, you know, none of us actually want God to change his plans just because we ask, but, you know, there's still that fear that God won't do what I want him to do. I knew that only God could change our circumstances, and obviously there was hope that his test would be negative the next day. But then, you know, I was a mom, so I felt like I needed to be strong for my children and my grandchildren, and even for Rodney, because he was in a country and wanting to come home as much as I wanted him to come home.
Very much.
And so, you know, this mom wanted to be strong, but at the same time, I wanted to just dissolve in a pity party. But I knew I couldn't do that. And I knew that God was the only one that could change our circumstances. And God began to prepare my heart for the test for the coming day.
Yeah, and the reality is, as God prepared her heart for another positive test on the morning of the 16th, I'd already been braced for it as well. When the results came in, I told a member of the team, of course at a distance, I said, it's positive, and we all knew that it was going to be. It was the reality that we were dealing with. This is episode 2 of our COVID Chronicles. I hope you'll stay with us through this process, because we're going to walk you through 10 days of isolation in a third world country. We're going to walk you through what I felt and what the members of this family felt and what we dealt with. We're going to talk about our interactions with people in both Africa and America. We've got some high praise for some really good people that you're going to hear about. And we have the greatest of praise for God who brought deliverance. And then you'll not want to miss, as we come to the end of the COVID Chronicles, the exciting story of what it was like to actually start coming home, even after I was permitted to board that airplane flight. These are the COVID Chronicles. I hope they're an encouragement, maybe even a warning at points to you. Thank you for tuning in.